All right, yeah, we'll go ahead and kick things off. So, good afternoon, folks who are joining. Thanks for attending this webinar where we're going to be going over the Palisades Nuclear Facility and talking a little bit about some pros and some cons about this facility of people for and against it, and kind of how an economic and fiscal analysis with IMPLAN can fit into that. So today I'm your presenter. My name is Andrew Fennell. I'm the Director of Solutions Engineering and Consulting here at IMPLAN. I've been here for a little over 7 years, helping folks do all kinds of different projects with IMPLAN, from nuclear facilities, solar facilities, data centers, multifamily housing projects, a lot of different work over my time at IMPLAN of helping people with methodology and kind of helping them apply IMPLAN to their projects. So happy to talk about one of them today. What are we going to be going over? We're going to be talking about the Palisades Nuclear Facility. We'll talk a little bit about the history of the facility. It's just important to set the stage. We'll spend a little bit of time on that front. We'll talk about the acquisition of the facility, some environmental and social pressures that we're building up around it, the federal government's involvement, the state government's involvement, city, local governments' involvement, and then also where the facility's at today. Before we get started, though, definitely want to field and answer any questions that you all may have to the best of my ability. And we can do that with our Q&A function. You'll see a picture of it, how to access it here. If you could, please put your questions in there. We'll have some time at the end to go over those. I'm planning on talking for about 20 minutes and then happy to field any of those questions and we can go over those. So just as an introduction, just a verbal introduction, we're going to be talking today about the economic and fiscal impacts that this facility has. We're going to be talking about how those play in to making a project like this happen, which they are a piece of making a project like this happen. I've worked at IMPLAN. I have my bachelor's degree in economics, and so I'm able to speak on some of the economic aspects of this. But I am by no way a nuclear physicist or expert on nuclear power generation. I'm not an expert on environmental regulations around nuclear energy. So we won't really be talking about those. If you have those questions, definitely look at some materials around the Palisades. But today we're really going to be focusing on the economic and fiscal aspects of this facility. So with that in mind, we'll talk a little bit about just the origin of the facility. So what is this? This is a nuclear power facility that was commissioned in the early 70s and built throughout the early 70s in Michigan. It's in Van Buren County, Michigan. I'm going to say this now, and then we'll talk about it more on the current state of where the Palisades facility is. But Van Buren County is a fairly small county in southwestern Michigan in terms of its population and employment. As of a couple of years ago, you're talking about 75,000 people, about 33,000 jobs in the county. So, and a facility like this coming into an area like that is important. Definitely important for when you look at rural areas across the United States. Oftentimes, you can see very large facilities being huge economic engines where the entire county's economy can be built up around them. That was somewhat the case with Palisades. It was a big deal when it started in the 70s. It was owned by CMS Energy for a long time, and then eventually it was sold to a company called Entergy in 2007. And this facility operated for a while, as you can see here. But what we're really talking about is kind of starting in this 2007 time period. Entergy applied for and received an operating license extension, which brought the facility life up until 2031. But we'll see kind of how some things changed over that time period. So acquisition and pressures. We'll talk about some of these, but these topics come up a lot, especially at IMPLAN. We help a lot of people with economic impact around solar development. Data centers is another really big one as of the past couple of years that can be subject to certain social and environmental pressures, and economic analyses showing the jobs supported, the taxes supported, can be useful in being pro for some of these facilities. So where we're at with our project, though, with this nuclear facility. A company called Holtec International acquired the Palisades facility, and their intention was to complete a decommissioning and actually dismantle the facility around 2022. So this was mainly around rising costs related to operating a nuclear facility, but also different types of incentives around solar and wind, making those types of energy much more affordable. There were a lot of subsidies and grant programs going out from the federal government at that time to help facilitate those types of energy, and it really just became a position where the owners of the facility did not want to continue operating it. So shutting down a nuclear facility is not like turning a car off. It's pretty intense, and also the potential reopening of it, which we'll talk about now, which was planned for at least, or the ideas started around 2023, is the first of its kind in the United States. This has been done elsewhere outside of the United States, but restarting a dormant nuclear facility, or sometimes if you read about these facilities, they're listed as zombie facilities. That has not been done in the United States. So Holtec is entering some pretty uncharted territory with this idea, and pretty quickly some pressures start to build, and this is where really the social and environmental pressures that you see on the screen start to happen. I put a picture on here talking about some of the yard signs that were passed out. So we're talking about grassroots organizations getting involved at this point. If you're familiar with looking at any sort of city council meetings around data centers for areas that they're provided with, very similar ideas where you'll see some yard signs passed out in this case, advocating to shut down the Palisades. I put some quotes on here too, just talking about the different organizations that are starting to get involved with this. Don't Waste Michigan here on the right, really talking about the safety of the facility. They cited some different welds not being properly inspected. Again, I'm not an expert on nuclear power facilities, so I can't really speak to the safety aspect, but all of this on the screen is or really opposing the reopening of this facility. And you can see here on the top left, the Michigan Safe Energy Future. They came out and raised some concerns around nuclear safety. So from a meltdown situation even, but also from saying that the facility would not support certain climate goals in the area, really in the country. So, and even further down here on the bottom left, you have environmental groups coming together. There's a large national organization called Beyond Nuclear, which actually formed with a few other coalitions. And in November of 2025, so we're talking about 5-ish months ago from today, filed a federal lawsuit, really an injunction in federal court in the Western District of Michigan to stop this facility from restarting and opening. So there's a lot of social, environmental, and legal pressures around this facility, where the plan was originally to shut it down. The facility is planning on coming back online, and certain groups are rightfully, in their opinion, opposed to that. And that's kind of just setting the stage on where we're at with that. So from a perspective of getting an analysis done, an economic impact analysis and buy-in, obviously Holtec in this situation is in a position where they want to reopen this facility, but there's a lot of pressure around it. So getting some sort of numbers behind this is a key component of the advocacy for it. Now, the numbers that you see on the screen here are some hypothetical impact analysis numbers that were done that play a part in a very large study. So when we think about this study, this was done by Enercon and many other organizations helped with this study. It's about 120 pages long, and it goes into a lot of different aspects. There's information about the demand for electricity in the region, future anticipated demand, like from data centers in the state of Michigan, how safety is being taken into account with meltdown scenarios, as well as safety at the facility. There's a lot of information in the report talking about reopening this facility and doing it. But the part where IMPLAN comes into play is talking about these numbers that you see on the screen. And this is really where I want to highlight and focus on this today. When you think about these types of analyses, these really get broken into two main buckets or streams you can think of. There's the temporary or construction effects of reopening this facility, as well as the ongoing annual operation aspect of this. And the operation aspect will be more permanent in this analysis. It was anticipated for 60 years. You'll see on the screen here, this is from the Federal Department of Energy, but they're anticipating at least until 2051 of the facility operating. So some numbers getting put out there. But really, when you talk about these numbers on the screen, you have the direct numbers. These are like jobs at the facility, whether it be for the construction or the restarting this facility, which again, this is pretty uncharted territory globally, but it's definitely uncharted territory in the United States. These are specialists coming in to work on this facility, bringing in nuclear fuel cells, installing them, getting them set up, getting new piping put in, all kinds of different work happening in the facility. But then you'll also see types of indirect activities. So operating in a nuclear power facility in this region, we talked earlier about Van Buren County and that economy in that region, that fairly small economy with about 33,000 jobs in that county. This nuclear facility interacts with other businesses when they bring in those technicians and they have to stay at a local hotel. They spend money at local restaurants. Those are kind of induced effects that you can see, but also indirect effects throughout the state. It's talking about how this facility is going to need development services from architectural and design firms. It's going to need legal services. It's going to need banking services. They're going to need to buy staffing services to help get security guards at the facility. All things like that are how this facility will be interacting with the state of Michigan. And that's really what's listed down there on the bottom right. And this study was really around the aspect of thinking about the lifetime of the facility. So how this will impact the U.S. GDP over the lifetime, the 60-year plant operations with federal taxes, state taxes, local taxes from the operation, local meaning city or county to Van Buren County. And then that's kind of separate from the construction aspect. That's really what we're talking about here. And this kind of aspect of getting an economic impact analysis and getting this in here as part of the larger report, which we can certainly just distribute and share out if anyone's interested in looking at the entire thing, is certainly a key component in this. And getting this kind of buy-in from the agencies that you see on the screen and some quotes on here. This is not the point of this webinar today. Isn't really to talk about how do you do a nuclear power facility economic impact analysis. So this really what we're talking about today is how those numbers get presented to larger audiences. So when those numbers were taken, we see a quote here from Gretchen Whitmer from the Michigan governor's office, getting involved in putting out positive press about the facility. We see Zach Morris, who's the executive director of Market Van Buren, talking about this facility closing. And I think I really want to highlight on this one with the local entities, because you see a lot of this pushback can happen from local area governments, like local town councils, city councils. Zach Morris in this quote that I took out here went on further even to say that this facility, when it shut down, was a big negative loss in the county. It was fairly unexpected. The license, like I was saying before, was anticipated for it to operate until at least 2031, and it was shut down in 2022. So it was fairly unexpected in a fairly small community. It was a big loss to the area in terms of jobs, but also tax revenues. He went on to say they were looking at tax revenue for schools, police, emergency services, libraries, roads. They were counting on that tax revenue and had factored that in from the facility and its economic aspects. But with the plant closing, that was all up in the air. So they've made some different plans and been able to kind of come up with a better economic resiliency plan. But with the facility now planning to come back online, it's really, really exciting for them to see that positive effect coming back into their community. And then even further on the far right, different congressional representatives, different committees have said this in a few different quotes, but I highlighted one right here. Getting federal buy-in is extremely important, not only to get the press aspect of it, but also from a financial aspect of the program. And so again, with the numbers from IMPLAN involved in the report, the facility was able to get a few things. So the Department of Energy first guaranteed a $1.52 billion loan to bring the facility back online, which was really key in getting that set back up. The other thing that's happened is we have a $400 million DOE First Mover Team Support Award, which this is fairly recent. Again, the date on this is from December of last year. So getting grants out and set up. And then even kind of further grant aspects is the USDA has even gotten involved, where they've given $1.3 billion to Hoosier Energy and Wolverine Power Supply Cooperatives to buy electricity from this facility once it's anticipated to be online, which should be probably in the 2030s is when they're anticipating operation, probably early 2030s on this. So looking at the current state and how this facility was able to get back online, we have a couple of different things to kind of go over here. So the first bit is this this uprise of where we're at today. So with the Department of Energy, this is actually from March 12th is this program. So this was about a week ago. The Utility Power Reactor Incremental Scaling effort was launched by the DOE, which is continuing to support restarts of those dormant facilities or those kind of zombie facilities. You'll see them referred to. So this is starting really a movement across the country to reactivate nuclear facilities as we see demand for electricity increase with things like data centers coming online. But I also wanted to highlight where Holtec is at right now. This is from Chris Singh, the CEO there, talking about getting people into the facility, like physically starting to make this happen. They've already got 1,800 people in there in kind of their first phase as they start to bring this facility back online. And talking about how that impacts Southwest Michigan. Again, 1,800 people coming into a county of 70,000 is a pretty big increase in specialists from around the world. And when they go in to spend money at those hotels to stay there long term, they rent cars, they buy airfare to get into the area and then commute in. They buy gas at local gas stations, all things like that. Those kind of economic impacts are where kind of the construction aspect of the economic analysis was talking about. So I mentioned before the facility is having that utility power reactor incremental scaling effort that basically has been the poster child of this basically program by the Department of Energy. But then also at the end of 2025, you see a picture here on the left. 68 new nuclear fuel assemblies have arrived at the Palisades, and you can see those kind of going in and things being set up there. Again, far beyond my knowledge of how nuclear facilities work. But that kind of hopefully wraps things up. I'll make one more point too. I was just checking. I talked earlier about the injunction that was filed in federal court to stop the facility as of February 27th. So we're talking about 2.5 weeks ago. That was ruled out basically as not having jurisdiction in that area. So the facility is continuing to move forward. But just a note here, talking about different topics around IMPLAN. We try to get these going once a month. So if you have topics, especially with facilities like this, maybe data centers or organizations in your local community where you think would be a good idea, we'd love to highlight those and get the word out about them. But I mentioned before, we weren't really going to be going into talking about the methodology or kind of the approach of actually doing this economic impact analysis. I really wanted to highlight how this works once you do those numbers, and then what can you get out of them, overcoming social and environmental pressures, maybe even safety pressures that are in the local area. But would love to just set up a time to talk and go over a specific project. If you'd like to, you can reach out to us on our website. But with that, I want to say thanks. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen and take a look at some of the questions that have come up. So Chris, it looks like you had a question in there saying our town and county really does need info like this and doesn't have anyone doing the analysis. I find myself trying to help where I can. As the resident local university senior economist, we have a data center being proposed, and the numbers they were promising were totally nonsensical, leading to giant local fights with the types of yard signs you showed. Thank you for sharing this framework. I'm in Wisconsin, and things are a little bit skewed by tax policy. So, yeah, thanks for the question and the point there. I think, I mean, I've certainly seen in my time at IMPLAN where there are oftentimes more projects than these companies can take on. So there's what I mean by that is there's certainly work available for people to get expertise in doing these analyses correctly, and getting economic impact analysis out for specific projects is really really good. Another thing too is we'll share maybe to the attendee list on here. We have the ability to do that. The full report that was done, that was commissioned by Enercon, a consulting firm called Veritas Consulting, was doing the economic analysis for that using IMPLAN, and we'll share maybe kind of their methodology on how that was done. Really, when we look at these types of analyses, though, just as a primer for it, we want to be considering the local area. In this case, talking about Van Buren County, the rest of the state of Michigan, and then the rest of the United States. We talk about local, state, and the national economies and how projects impact those areas differently. With nuclear power, unless you happen to have your uranium mine in your area, maybe some of the inputs would be coming from outside of your area, from other areas of the country. But looking at kind of those local purchasing percentage, the regional purchasing coefficients, and talking about kind of the prevalence of certain goods and services in the area is important to look at. The other thing to consider in areas like data centers, for example, a big factor for those is looking at the electricity consumption. So checking out the electricity production, the demand for electricity in the area, how electricity is moving out to serve other areas outside of, say, like a state. That's all data you can look at in IMPLAN, and we can certainly go over that. So yeah, thanks on that. And then I do see in the chat we've had a couple people chiming in there. So yeah, thanks for talking about in the chat. I know too, talking about like another area like with Bitcoin and Coinbase operations. That's definitely something to consider with IMPLAN too. They're really big electricity consumers. So entities that kind of mine Bitcoin and do that definitely can have a certain economic impact, as well as talking about environmental advocates not wanting that to happen. I mean, that's definitely something where I think an IMPLAN analysis can be helpful. And sometimes it's both sides of the coin. I mean, you got to look at it from both perspectives. The environmental effects are certainly something to consider, but when you look at local townships, just to go back to the quote we went over in the webinar today, talking about how some of these projects can be so big they will fund an entire county's school, police, emergency services. They can pay for new roads, and that's something to consider, especially for city council members that might be getting pressure from different organizations to say yes or no on something. So yeah, we'll definitely share out the full report. It does seem like there's a lot of interest on that front. And they have a very full detailed methodology. The methodology was actually fairly interesting, just to talk about it in the time we have left here. But the methodology of a nuclear power facility restarting, which has not been done in the United States, was certainly hypothetical. There were some ideas to base that off of. There were actually even a couple dormant nuclear facilities in Michigan that were being evaluated on whether or not to start them up. So definitely interesting to see that on that. And yeah, I mean, I'm seeing some comments from Anthony too, talking about Northeast Tennessee. I mean, this is we highlighted Southwest Michigan today, but this is happening all across the United States. Like I said, I mean, I work here at IMPLAN. I talk with people about their projects when they come in. This is not subject to just one area of the United States. These kind of situations are going all over Arizona, Texas, Florida, a lot of different areas that people are doing this. So a lot of work to go around and to look at some of these things. Um, yeah. So there were some questions too about how we collaborate on projects. So we offer subscriptions to our tool and the model that you see here today. We also have some services where we can help you with some methodology in setting up the analysis. A great first step is really just getting started with reaching out to us. If you have a project, we'd love to set up kind of an intro call and talk about it and talk about some nuances and special circumstances for a project you might have. So yeah, from an analysis perspective, the one we went over to today was all backwards linkages. So we were not talking about forward linkages today. When this analysis was done that we went over today, that was in 2024, right at the beginning of that, where our forward linkage solution was not available yet. So would be pretty cool to take another look at it from a forward linkage perspective. But forward linkages really look at kind of how things impact the economy downstream. Backwards linkages are all upstream from suppliers. Yeah, so definitely exciting to look at. It's probably something for this. But yeah, I mean, we definitely work with different organizations, whether they be the developers, maybe consulting firms, maybe even financiers of some of these projects. That's especially true in the solar facility or in the solar world, I'd say, to get these economic and fiscal analyses done. I've seen that you certainly have, when you have an economic and fiscal analysis prepared going into a city council meeting, is definitely a good thing to have going into it and getting started, rather than waiting for some of these social and environmental pressures to start building and then kind of offering it as a counter. Coming in on the front end is I've seen generally more successful. Definitely speaking generally there. Yeah, and Chris, I see you in there talking about the developers coming in and requiring NDAs from all the people involved. Yeah, so we do have the ability to kind of work with some data with an NDA in place. We've done that for a few clients. So we've at IMPLAN, we're fairly well versed in looking at different data sets, even sensitive data sets. So that's not a problem for us on doing that there. Yeah, so I think with that, we've had a lot of great engagement today. I really appreciate all the questions and kind of feedback and going over this. Hopefully you saw how an economic and fiscal analysis can be a piece in presenting your project and how they can maybe offer a counter to some of those social and environmental aspects of a project. So with that, I want to say thanks. Definitely feel free to reach out to us. We'll be reaching out to everyone today with the report and maybe some more info on IMPLAN. But yeah, we're always here at implan.com if you want to have a conversation with us. So thanks, everyone.